Hello everyone and welcome back as I take a look at the final figure in the Dark Knight Returns wave from McFarlane Toys in their DC Multiverse line, and today it is the turn of Superman. So let's not beat about the bush any further, let's dive straight into looking at the packaging. Now, if you've seen any of my other videos in this series, or indeed any of my other DC Multiverse figure reviews, then you'll know I'm not a huge fan of McFarlane Toys' approach to their packaging. The only key difference with this packaging is that they do tend to be more of a square shape, they're slightly broadened than the usual rectangle that we get in this series. Otherwise, the branding and the design is pretty much exactly what we usually get. It is black borders, there is that blue collage in the background, it is mostly window display, and I must say this figure looks very attractive in that display to be fair, but there's not really an awful lot else going on. Likewise, if we turn to the side panel, I always complain, but this just feels like a giant waste of space. We just have big chunky lettering, which is quite nice, but it would have been so much more impactful if we'd had a nice colourful image of the character. Either a photo of the toy or a comic book image taken directly from the source material would have been really nice, and it would have looked attractive if we stacked these up on the shelf with other figures in the collection. Then if we flip the packaging over and look at the back, one of the major criticisms I have of this wave is that every single sleeve is exactly the same on the reverse of the packaging. We have the same image of the bath, which is the horse that you build with Batman perched on it. This is really nice artwork, but I think it would have been better if we'd had the smaller images at the bottom of the packaging, which is unique to each character that you're actually picking up. As it is, this just feels a little bit repetitive and dull. If you've seen my other videos in this series so far, you'll know that overall I've been very disappointed with some of these figures, but I have to say things take a massive upswing here with Superman. I have to say I really like the sculpting on this figure. They seem to have done a really nice job of capturing the likeness of Frank Miller's Superman as he appears in The Dark Knight Returns. Likewise, the paint apps are pretty neatly applied, and there's some nice detailing going on here, some different colours underneath the eyes, for example around the lips and the teeth and the mouth, which just gives it a little bit more depth and texture, which is really cool. One thing I want to commend McFarlane Toys for with this figure is the sculpting, because to the best of my knowledge, this is all brand new. I don't think they've recycled anything here. Now, I might be wrong, but this looks really fresh, and it looks really good and specific to this version of Superman, which is absolutely fantastic. So he's got a very distinct, very unique feel in this collection, and that is always really nice to see. So I think they've done a nice job with the sculpting. There's lots of detailing when it comes to the muscle groups, and I really like that they've sculpted in the S, the Superman logo there, is absolutely fantastic. Obviously the colours are really nice. Now there's not much in the way of paint apps here, everything that you see is moulded in those plastic colours, but it works for Superman. He's bright, he's colourful as he should be, and I think this looks great. Would I have preferred a wash? Absolutely, just to enhance the detail and depth and the texturing, but this still works really nicely, and I have no real criticisms of this, other than, of course, the ball joints on the ankles there. This always looks unseemly, but again, here on Superman, to be fair, I think it probably works the best out of all the figures in this wave so far. That being said, my one major criticism is of this rubber cape. As you'll know by now, I'm not a fan of this approach, and I wish that McFarlane Toys would get into using more cloth capes as we've seen them do in more recent figures, because I think this is just so much more effective. And these sculpted, moulded capes, they don't look great, they don't feel fantastic, and they have a tendency to be quite heavy and unbalance the figure. If we look at the articulation, we can see there is a ball joint in the top of the neck there, so he can spin his head all the way around, he can lean it left and right, and of course he can nod it up and down a pretty healthy distance too. Now he's got those big ball joints in his shoulders, so his arms will lift up and out, but there's also a butterfly wing joint here as well to give that extra posability, which is fantastic. Sadly, he does only have a single joint in the elbow, and this is not a pin swivel, so it will not rotate side to side. But he does have a ball joint in the wrist there, so again, that fist will rotate all the way around, and it will hinge forwards and backwards, but it's always a bit of a struggle. I really do not like this joint from McFarlane Toys. It doesn't really work particularly well. Now, he does have 2 points of articulation in the torso. He has one in the top of his chest there. There's a ball joint that will allow him to spin from side to side, lean left and right, and bend forwards and backwards. But there's another ball joint in the waist as well, which will allow him to spin from side to side and will aid with the bending forwards and backwards. Now there's ball joints in the hips, of course those legs will kick out to the side, they'll kick forwards and backwards, and there is thankfully a double joint in the knee, which will allow that lower leg to kick all the way back. Then of course we have more ball joints in the ankle, which doesn't look great, but it will allow the foot to spin from side to side and hinge forwards and backwards, and then finally there is some toe articulation. Accessories wise, he's pretty light. All he comes with is an additional pair of open hands. This is disappointing. I think there's some extra things they could have thrown in here. We recently saw a Mafex that came with the missile, for example. That would have been pretty cool. Anything to just really enhance this offering, because what we get is pretty bare bones. And although something is better than nothing, perhaps an alternate head would have been the preference here. These hands are fine, but they look a bit creepy. I'm not quite sure how you're supposed to use them. Because they're so curled, you can't really reenact a proper flying pose. It doesn't look quite right like this. Now, as a quick scale comparison, here he is standing next to another 7-inch Superman figure from McFarlane Toys. This is, I think, their first Superman offering. And as you can see, it's like night and day, because these are two very distinctly different Supermen with two very distinctive different styles. And then here's Superman with Batman, so you can pair these up and you can see these look pretty good, again pretty much in relation to what you'd expect in terms of scale. It looks pretty accurate to me, and I think these both look pretty nice together. So then, in terms of my final thoughts, I'm going to give this figure 4 stars, because I think this figure does an awful lot of things right. I really like the body sculpting, I really like that this is brand new and unique to this character. It definitely replicates, it's very authentic in terms of what we see on the page as drawn by Frank Miller. He's bright and he's colourful, and he has some fantastic articulation to boot, so you can put him in a lot of fun different poses and he works really, really well. And in point of fact, I would say he's actually my favourite of all the figures in this wave. He's the most fun and he seems to work the best. He seems to be the most functional as well. But I'm going to have to knock off a star because the accessories we get is a bit limiting, and the cape is a massive drawback for me. I really hate this approach, as I've mentioned on many previous videos. I really wish they'd give him a cloth cape. Other than that, this is a pretty solid figure, and if you like Frank Miller's Superman, then you're probably going to want to add this one to your collection, because I think this is probably one of the nicest versions out there. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos soon.